A dark cloud has been gathering over the Roloff family, a storm of whispers and accusations that has now broken into a tempest of scandal. For years, viewers have watched the family dynamics shift and fracture, but the true rotten core of the conflict has remained a closely guarded secret until now. The story you are about to hear is a harrowing account of betrayal, manipulation, and greed, centered on the final, vulnerable months of the beloved Roloff matriarch, Peggy Roloff. We have an exclusive, explosive report from an insider, a hospice nurse who was there in Peggy's final days. This nurse, bound until recently by a non-disclosure agreement, has come forward to expose what she claims is the Roloff's darkest secret. A calculated heist of family heirlooms and assets, allegedly orchestrated by Caryn Chandler, preying on a dying woman to steal a legacy meant for Amy and her grandchildren. This is a story of greed, manipulation, and the alleged theft of a family's history. The details are shocking, and they will change everything you thought you knew about the Roloffs. Before we dive into this exclusive report, make sure you are subscribed to LPBW Update and hit that like button to help us get this story out. You won't want to miss a single jaw-dropping detail. To understand the sheer gravity of these new allegations, we must first go back to the final year of Peggy Roloff's life. As many of you know, the Roloff family, particularly Matt, has always painted a picture of a tight-knit, loving family. Peggy and Ron were the bedrock of that family, the steadfast anchors in a world of reality, television, chaos. But as their health began to decline, that foundation started to show cracks, not from within, but from an outside force that had been slowly and methodically embedding itself into the very heart of the Roloff dynasty. Peggy in her last months was a shadow of her former self. A woman who had raised a family with immense strength and faith was now frail, her memory fading, her cognitive state declining rapidly. She was, in the starkest of terms, vulnerable. This vulnerability, according to our insider source, was not seen as a tragedy by everyone. For Caryn Chandler, it was allegedly seen as an opportunity. As Matt's partner, Caryn had already positioned herself as a key figure in Roloff's life. Her transition from farm manager to Matt's girlfriend was a source of endless speculation and controversy among fans, with many, including Amy Roloff herself, suggesting the relationship began long before the divorce was final. But her role in Peggy's final days went far beyond that of a supportive partner to a grieving son. According to our source, the hospice nurse who wishes to remain anonymous for her safety, Caryn systematically installed herself as Peggy's primary caregiver. On the surface, it looked like an act of profound kindness. Matt was busy, torn between the farm and his own health issues. The kids had their own families. Here was Caryn stepping into the breach. But the nurse claims this was the first move in a chillingly calculated game of isolation. She was always there, the nurse stated in an exclusive interview. At first, it seemed helpful, but then we started noticing a pattern. Whenever Amy or one of the kids would call, Caryn would often answer Peggy's phone. She'd say Peggy was sleeping or confused or just not up for a call. She became a gatekeeper. This isolation, the nurse alleges, was crucial for the next stage of the plan. With Peggy's contact with the rest of the family limited and filtered through Caryn, a new narrative could be spun. The nurse claims to have overheard Caryn's constant whispers, a steady drip of poison into the ear of a confused and ailing woman. She allegedly badmouthed Amy relentlessly. I heard her on multiple occasions, the nurse said. She'd be fluffing Peggy's pillows and saying things like, "It's a shame Amy doesn't visit anymore. She's just so busy with her own life now, but don't you worry, Peggy. I'm here. I care about you like you're my own mother." These statements, seemingly innocent expressions of care, were, according to the nurse, tools of manipulation. They preyed on Peggy's fears of being forgotten, of being a burden. They created a false reality where Caryn was the sole provider of love and comfort, while Peggy's own daughter-in-law, the mother of her grandchildren, was portrayed as distant and uncaring. It was a classic, cruel tactic of emotional abuse designed to make Peggy dependent on and utterly trusting of Caryn. And it was this carefully cultivated trust that allegedly allowed Caryn to move on to the financial phase of her operation. The nurse speaks of moments that, at the time, seemed odd, but in retrospect are utterly horrifying. She describes Caryn arriving at the house with manila folders filled with what she would breezily call just some routine paperwork. The nurse recalls Caryn would sit by Peggy's bedside, holding her hand, and say things like, "Now, Peggy, we just need to get these medical forms signed for the insurance. It's all so complicated, but don't you worry your pretty little head. I'll take care of it all." Peggy, whose eyesight was failing and whose mind was clouded with medication and illness, would simply sign where Caryn pointed. The nurse now believes those were not medical forms. She is convinced that among those papers were documents that gave Caryn power of attorney or that signed over ownership of specific assets. Savings bonds, certificates of deposit, small but significant pools of money that Peggy had painstakingly saved over a lifetime, allegedly rerouted from her grandchildren's inheritance into Caryn Chandler's control. But the most shocking and heartbreaking allegation centers on the Roloff family jewels. Every family has them. Items whose value is not measured in carats or dollars, but in memories and promises. For the Roloffs, one such item was a magnificent diamond necklace. It wasn't the largest or most extravagant piece Peggy owned, but it was the most important. It was the piece Ron had given her on their 25th wedding anniversary, and it carried the weight of their long and loving marriage. For years, it was a known promise within the family that the necklace would one day belong to Amy, to be passed down to her daughter Molly. It was a matriarchal line of succession, a symbol of the Roloff women. According to the nurse, she walked into Peggy's room one afternoon to find Caryn holding the necklace, letting the diamonds catch the light. Peggy was in bed, looking distressed and confused. The nurse claims to have overheard the final, chilling words of Caryn's alleged persuasion. She was telling Peggy, "You know Amy won't appreciate this the way I will. It'll just sit in a drawer. Let me keep it safe for the family. I'll make sure it's protected." It was the culmination of her campaign. She had positioned herself as the family's true caretaker, the protector of its legacy, even as she was allegedly prying that legacy from the hands of its rightful heirs. The nurse says that Peggy, in a moment of profound weakness, relented. She watched as Caryn clasped the priceless family heirloom around her own neck before tucking it away in her purse. This single act, the alleged theft of a promise, is devastating enough. But the nurse provides more. She offers what she calls a smoking gun, a piece of evidence that she has kept hidden for years, waiting for her NDA to expire, waiting for the right moment to expose the truth. During one of her final shifts, the nurse claims Peggy had a rare moment of lucidity. The fog of her illness seemed to lift, and a look of deep, profound worry crossed her face. Unable to speak at length, Peggy supposedly grabbed a notepad from her bedside table and scribbled a short, frantic message. She then pressed the folded note into the nurse's hand with a look that pleaded for understanding. The nurse kept that note. She read it after her shift, her blood running cold. The note, in Peggy's shaky, faint handwriting, allegedly read, "Caryn made me sign papers, worried about Amy's necklace." This handwritten plea from a dying woman is a bombshell. But the evidence doesn't stop there. In the weeks following Peggy's death, as the Roloff family was shrouded in grief, another disturbing event took place. Fueled by her suspicions, The nurse's testimony prompted a quiet investigation into local pawn shops and gold buyers in the towns surrounding Hillsborough. And there, they found it. A receipt from a pawn shop dated just 3 weeks after Peggy's funeral. The item sold was a distinct antique gold brooch, another piece of Peggy's known collection, though less sentimentally significant than the diamond necklace. It was sold for a few $1,000s in cash. The seller's name on the receipt, Caryn Chandler. This discovery is a crucial piece of the puzzle. It suggests a pattern of behavior. The necklace was the prize, the symbol. But the smaller, less recognizable pieces were allegedly for quick, untraceable cash. It paints a picture not of a misunderstanding or a misinterpretation of a frail woman's wishes, but of a systematic liquidation of assets, a financial heist carried out in the shadow of death. Armed with the nurse's on-camera testimony, the damning handwritten note, and the pawn shop receipt, the full scope of this alleged betrayal is now coming to light. And it forces us to re-examine everything we've seen play out on our screens for the past several years. The deep, bitter rift between Matt and his children, particularly Zach, has been a central storyline on Little People, Big World. The official narrative has always centered on the dispute over the family farm. Zach and Jeremy's failed attempt to buy a portion of the property created a chasm in the family that has never healed. Fans have long blamed Caryn for influencing Matt's decision, for being too involved in family business that was none of her affair. Zach himself has stated on camera that Caryn's presence made him uncomfortable and that he and Tori did not want her around their children. But what if the farm was only a symptom of a much deeper disease? What if the animosity Zach and other family members feel towards Caryn isn't just about business negotiations, but about a monstrous betrayal they have been forced to keep silent about? Imagine Zach knowing or suspecting that the woman who helped torpedo his dream of raising his family on Roloff Farms is the same woman who allegedly preyed on his dying grandmother. The anger, the resentment, the absolute refusal to allow her near his children, it all suddenly clicks into place with a terrifying clarity. The family drama was not just about land. It was about a fundamental violation of trust, a desecration of Peggy's memory. This raises the most troubling question of all. What did Matt know, and when did he know it? Was he an unwitting victim, blinded by his affection for Caryn and his own grief over his mother's decline? Did he believe her lies, her claims that she was simply helping his mother manage her affairs? Or is the truth something far more sinister? Could he have been complicit? Did he turn a blind eye to her actions, perhaps convincing himself it was for the best, that Peggy's assets were better managed by Caryn? This is a dark path to go down, but it must be considered. Matt's relationship with his children has been strained for years. He has often lamented their distance, painting himself as the victim of their stubbornness. But if he knew about Caryn's alleged actions and did nothing, then the blame for the family's destruction lies squarely at his feet. The timing of this revelation is also critical. Matt and Caryn, after years of dating and a much publicized engagement, have recently and shockingly split. The official story is that they simply grew apart, a mutual decision to end their engagement. But this new information casts that breakup in a whole new light. Is it possible that the truth of the elder abuse scandal finally came out? Perhaps the nurse's NDA expired and she contacted members of the Roloff family directly. Perhaps the weight of the secret became too much to bear. Imagine a confrontation, not on a television set with cameras rolling, but in a private, rage-filled moment of reckoning. Imagine one of the Roloff children, armed with the note and the pawn shop receipt, finally confronting Matt with the horrific allegation that the woman he was about to marry, the woman he had given a central role in his family, had preyed on his own dying mother. The collapse of their engagement would be the only possible outcome. No relationship could survive a revelation of that magnitude. It would explain the suddenness of the split and the tight-lipped silence from the family. They aren't just nursing the wounds of a failed romance. They are grappling with a foundational betrayal that has poisoned the family well. Matt is now left to face the horrific aftermath. He has not only lost his fiancée, but he is now allegedly face-to-face with the monstrous truth of what she did. He is confronted with the idea that his mother's final days were not filled with peace and comfort, but with fear, confusion, and exploitation. The family history, the irreplaceable heirlooms that he was meant to be the steward of, were not protected. They were allegedly stolen, sold for cash, and treated as nothing more than spoils in a long and patient con. This is the ultimate reckoning for Matt Roloff. His life's work, the farm, has become a symbol of family division. His relationship with his children is in tatters, and now the memory of his beloved mother is tainted by a scandal of unimaginable cruelty. The nurse's story, if true, is not just an expose on Caryn Chandler. It is a tragedy that redefines the entire narrative of Little People, Big World. The show, which began as a heartwarming look at a unique family, has become a chronicle of its own demise, and we are only now beginning to understand the true depth of the darkness that has been festering just out of sight of the cameras. This insider report doesn't just add a new chapter to the Roloff saga, it rips out the pages of the old one and burns them. The story from here on out is one of seeking justice for Peggy, of confronting the ugliest of truths, and of a family trying to find a way back from a betrayal that has shattered them to their very core. The silence that has fallen over Roloff Farms in the wake of Matt and Caryn's split is not a silence of peace, but the deafening quiet of a bomb crater. The official narrative of a simple, amicable breakup has been shattered by the aftershocks of the nurse's explosive testimony, and what we are now witnessing is the agonizing, private fallout of a family grappling with a betrayal so profound it threatens to consume them entirely. In the immediate aftermath of the alleged confrontation, sources close to the family describe Matt Roloff as a man utterly broken, a hollowed-out shell of the confident patriarch we've seen on our screens. He has reportedly secluded himself in his new house, the dream home he built with Caryn, which now stands as a monument to her alleged deceit. Every corner, every design choice they made together is now tainted by the horrifying realization that he may have been sharing his life, his family, and his mother's final moments with a predator. The confrontation, as pieced together from insider whispers, was nothing short of volcanic. When presented with the evidence, the nurse's testimony, the handwritten note from his dying mother, the cold, hard proof of the pawn shop receipt, Matt's world reportedly imploded. His initial reaction was said to be one of furious denial, a desperate defense of the woman he loved. He allegedly accused his own children of conspiring against him, of being poisoned by Amy, of using any excuse to drive a wedge between him and Caryn. But the evidence was relentless. The sight of his mother's frail handwriting, a desperate plea from beyond the grave, was the blow he could not deflect. The anger then turned from his children to himself. A tidal wave of guilt and self-recrimination has reportedly left him paralyzed. How could he have been so blind? How could he have let this happen to his own mother, under his own roof? He, Matt Roloff, the problem solver, the man who could build anything, had failed to protect the most important person in his life from a threat living in his own bed. Caryn, for her part, has vanished. After the confrontation, she reportedly packed her bags and left the farm without a word to anyone but Matt. Her social media has gone dark. Her friends, when reached for comment, claim they have been instructed not to speak. This is not the behavior of an innocent woman wronged by false accusations. It is the silent retreat of someone whose game is up, someone who knows that the truth is a fire that will burn everything in its path. Her disappearance from the farm is a quiet admission of guilt, a desperate attempt to outrun the consequences of her alleged actions. But the Roloff family is no longer willing to let this secret fester in the dark. The battle for Peggy's legacy has just begun. At the heart of this new chapter is Amy Roloff. For years, she was painted as the bitter ex-wife, unable to move on, irrationally jealous of Caryn. Her every hesitation, every skeptical comment about Caryn's role on the farm and in the family was dismissed as resentment. Now, in the most tragic way imaginable, she has been vindicated. A source incredibly close to Amy describes her reaction as a maelstrom of conflicting emotions. There is no triumph, no "I told you so." There is only a deep, soul-crushing sadness. Sadness for Peggy, whom she loved as a mother, sadness for the violation of her memory, and a profound, gut-wrenching sorrow for the stolen necklace. Not for its monetary value, but for what it represented. A promise, a connection, a line of matriarchal love that was meant to stretch from Peggy to her to Molly. The theft of the necklace was a theft of her own history and her daughter's future. The most difficult moment, according to our sources, was the inevitable conversation between Amy and Matt. It was not a conversation of reconciliation, not yet. It was a raw, painful meeting of two people united by a shared horror. Matt, for the first time in perhaps decades, had to face Amy without his usual bluster and defensiveness. He had to admit that she had been right, that his judgment had failed catastrophically, and that his defense of Caryn had enabled an unspeakable act. He reportedly broke down, offering an apology that was years in the making, an apology not just for his blindness about Caryn, but for all the times he dismissed Amy's intuition. Amy, in turn, did not offer easy forgiveness. She offered a shared grief. She listened, she cried with him, not for him, but for Peggy and for the family they once had, the family that now seems to be a distant, impossible dream. This shared trauma has become a fragile, tentative bridge over the chasm that has separated them for so long. They are not a team yet, but for the first time since the divorce, they are finally standing on the same side, facing the same enemy. This crisis has also done what the farm dispute never could. It has united the four Roloff children. The squabbles over land and money, which seemed so monumental just a few months ago, have evaporated in the face of this monstrous offense against their grandmother. Zach, who has been the most vocal in his distrust of Caryn, is reportedly consumed by a cold, quiet rage. Every warning he gave his father, every instinct that told him Caryn was not to be trusted, has been validated in the most horrific way. He feels a terrible burden of guilt, wondering if he could have done more, shouted louder, fought harder to get his father to see the truth. Tori, always the protective mother, is now a lioness defending the memory of her children's great-grandmother. Her focus is on shielding Jackson and Lila from the ugliness of the scandal, while providing unwavering support for her husband. The decision to keep Caryn away from their children now seems less like a petty disagreement and more like a prescient act of protection. They were protecting their family not just from an unwelcome influence, but from a woman who allegedly saw their family's heritage as something to be plundered. Jeremy and Audrey, who have curated a life away from the show built on the pillars of family, faith, and legacy, are said to be equally appalled. Audrey, with her deep appreciation for heirlooms, for stories passed down through generations, is personally offended by the theft of the necklace. To her, it is not just jewelry, it is a narrative, a tangible piece of the Roloff family story that has been ripped out and sold. This violation of legacy is, in their eyes, an unforgivable sin. We are hearing whispers that Jeremy has re-engaged with Matt, not in anger, but with a firm, resolute demand for action. And then there is Molly and Jacob. Molly, the quiet one, the one who lives her life far from the cameras, has been thrust into the heart of this story. The necklace was promised to her. The theft was a personal affront, a robbery of a future moment she was supposed to share with her mother in the memory of her grandmother. And Jacob, the prodigal son, the family's fiercest critic, has reportedly reacted with surprising intensity. Never one to care for material possessions, Jacob is incensed by the sheer cruelty of the act, the manipulation of an elderly, dying woman. Unbound by any network contract or concern for public image, sources say Jacob is the one pushing the hardest for a public and legal reckoning. He wants justice, not just the return of stolen goods. He wants accountability. That push for accountability has now moved the family into a new, dangerous arena: the legal system. The Roloffs are now reportedly in consultation with a high-powered legal team, exploring every possible avenue for justice. This is no longer just a family drama. It is a potential criminal case. The charges being discussed are serious: elder abuse, theft, and possibly fraud. The family's lawyers are methodically building their case. The nurse's testimony is the cornerstone. Her credibility as a medical professional, her lack of any personal gain, and her detailed firsthand account make her a powerful witness. They are working to corroborate her story, seeking out other staff from the hospice agency, anyone who might have noticed Caryn's isolating behavior. Peggy's handwritten note is the emotional core of their case, a voice from the grave that cannot be cross-examined. Forensic analysis can confirm the handwriting is Peggy's, and the paper and ink can be dated to the time of her illness. It is a piece of evidence that will be devastating in a courtroom. The pawn shop receipt is the irrefutable link, the proof of Caryn's actions after Peggy's death. But the legal battle will not be easy, and this is where Caryn Chandler will finally be forced to break her silence. Trapped in a corner, she will have no choice but to fight back, and her defense will likely be as calculated and manipulative as her alleged crimes. We can expect Caryn to launch a vicious counteroffensive, not in a courtroom at first, but in the court of public opinion. She will almost certainly claim that the nurse is a liar, a disgruntled employee with a vendetta. She will attempt to dig up dirt on the nurse, to discredit her, to paint her as unstable or motivated by money. She will argue that Peggy, in her final days, was of sound mind and that she gifted her the jewelry and other assets. She will frame these gifts as tokens of Peggy's immense gratitude for her loving, devoted care. She will portray herself as the devoted caregiver who was there day and night, while Peggy's own family was often absent. Caryn will paint Amy and the children as greedy, materialistic vultures, upset that a few of Grandma's trinkets didn't fall into their laps. She'll claim they were the ones who were distant, who didn't care for Peggy in her time of need, and that their current outrage is a manufactured performance to cover their own guilt. She will likely produce documents, the very ones the nurse claims she tricked Peggy into signing, and argue they are perfectly legal and that she was merely helping Peggy organize her finances, a task the family had neglected. Her narrative will be simple and poisonous. She was Peggy's true confidant, and the Roloff children are now trying to rewrite history and destroy her reputation out of spite and jealousy. It will be a brutal, ugly war of narratives, forcing the Roloffs to publicly defend their relationship with their own matriarch and prove that they were not the neglectful family Caryn will claim they were. Amidst this looming legal war, the family has reportedly started a parallel investigation of their own, a desperate hunt for the stolen heirlooms. The gold brooch is gone, melted down, or resold, its cash value spent long ago. But the necklace, the priceless diamond necklace, is another story. It is too unique, too valuable to be sold at a common pawn shop. The family is working with private investigators and jewelry experts, distributing descriptions of the piece to high-end jewelers and auction houses across the country and even internationally. They are combing through Caryn's financial records, looking for any evidence of a large, unexplained deposit. Did she sell it on the black market? Has she hidden it away in a safe deposit box, waiting for the heat to die down? Or, in a final act of hubris, does she still have it? The thought that she might be keeping it, a trophy of her conquests, is a sickening possibility that haunts the family. This quest is not about money, it is about reclamation. Finding that necklace would be more than just recovering a stolen asset. It would be a symbolic victory, a way of restoring a piece of Peggy's desecrated honor. As the family's private investigation delves into Caryn's finances, they are also digging deeper into her past, and what they are beginning to uncover is allegedly a disturbing pattern of behavior. Before she was a manager on Roloff Farms, before she entered the world of reality television, Caryn had other jobs, other relationships. Whispers are now emerging of other situations, other vulnerable people who seem to have found themselves in financially precarious positions after Caryn entered their lives. We are hearing about a previous relationship with a well-off older gentleman whose family later raised questions about changes to his will. We are hearing about a past business venture that ended in lawsuits and accusations of misappropriated funds. These are, for now, just whispers, reports from our investigative team. But if these whispers solidify into facts, it will paint a picture of Caryn Chandler not as a woman who made one terrible mistake, but as a practiced manipulator, a predator who has honed her craft over many years, with Peggy Roloff being simply her most high-profile and heartbreaking victim. This avalanche of scandal puts the future of Little People, Big World, one of TLC's longest-running and most successful shows, in serious jeopardy. The network is facing a moral and logistical nightmare. How can they continue to produce a show that centers on the Roloff family without addressing the monstrous allegations against a woman who was, until recently, positioned as its new matriarch? Do they attempt to incorporate this storyline into the show? To do so would mean turning a family's deepest trauma into a television event, complete with interviews, dramatic reenactments, and cliffhangers. It would be a ratings bonanza, but at what ethical cost? It would require Matt, Amy, and their children to relive their agony for the cameras, to have their grief edited for dramatic effect. Alternatively, TLC could try to ignore it, to censor any mention of Caryn or the scandal, and attempt to pivot the show to focus solely on Zach and Tori's family or Amy and Chris's married life. But this would be an impossible task. The audience knows. The story is out. To ignore it would make the show feel like a hollow, sanitized lie, a complete betrayal of the reality it purports to represent. The shadow of Caryn's alleged crimes would loom over every scene, making the silence on the matter a deafening roar. The third, and perhaps most likely option, is that the show will simply end. The family may decide that they can no longer participate in the public performance of their lives when their private reality has become so horrific. The legal proceedings will be long and messy, and it is highly unlikely that their lawyers would allow them to discuss an active case on national television. It is entirely possible that the final chapter of the Roloff family saga will be written not on television screens, but in court documents and legal depositions. And so the Roloff family stands at a precipice. They are more united than they have been in years, forged together by a common cause and a shared grief. But the path ahead is fraught with peril. They are about to engage in a public and legal battle with a woman who knows all of their secrets, a woman who will likely stop at nothing to save herself. This will not be a clean fight. It will be a war of attrition, fought in the media and in the courtroom, that will force every member of the family to confront their past, their choices, and their own complicity in allowing this darkness to take root. For Matt Roloff, this is his last chance at redemption. His legacy is no longer about the farm. It is about whether he can lead the fight to get justice for his mother. He must prove to his children and to himself that his love for his family is stronger than the pride that kept him blind for so long. The fight for Peggy's legacy is a fight for the very soul of the Roloff family. They have lost their history, their trust, and their peace. The question that remains is, after all the pain and all the betrayal, can they find a way to win it back? The storm has broken and the wreckage is still being assessed, but one thing is certain. The world of Little People, Big World will never be the same.